Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show on DRF TV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forms Twitter handle at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forms Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show. Taking a look back at racing from this past weekend, that would be June the 9th, 2018. Happened to be Belmont Stakes Saturday, and the Belmont will be the leadoff as far as our recaps are concerned this week. If you listen to this program podcast form, like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com. If you listen over on YouTube, click that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. You get all the latest offerings from DRF TV. If you listen on iTunes, write us a nice little review. Give us a nice rating. Would be greatly appreciated. Let's not bury the lead. We're going to go over the 6 Grade 1 races in depth, as we normally do with the recaps, and then the other graded stakes races, just from a timing standpoint, because there was about 5 million of them this weekend. They're all going to be included in the stakes montage. We'll give you the weekend's best from a Beyer speed figure standpoint and the best performances, as well as the DRF TV schedule of events for this upcoming week. Without further ado, though, let's take a look at the field for the 150th Belmont Stakes, the test of the champion, 10 3-year-olds going a mile and a half. The question was, Justify. Would he be able to successfully earn his sort of place in the history of American racing, becoming the 13th Triple Crown champion? And would any of the other competitors actually be able to give him a legitimate threat or a legitimate fight? Ultimately, this thing kind of planned out and played out the way that I think most people thought it would. Justify was the best horse coming in, and he's the best horse coming out. Larry Colmus with the stretch run of the 150th Belmont Stakes.
The stretch, and Justify comes roaring home to a raucous Belmont Park with 1 furlong to run. Gronkowski and Hofberg trying to run him down. Vino Rosso is 4th, a 16th to go. Justify is still there. Justify from Gronkowski. He's just perfect, and now he's just immortal.
Justify is your Triple Crown champion, the 13th in the history of American racing. He gets the job done as the 4-5 favorite in the Belmont Stakes. Gronkowski making his stateside debut for Chad Brown and Jose Ortiz. He runs a very, very impressive second at odds of 24-1. And the third place finisher is Hofberg, going out for Belmont and Irad Ortiz Jr., 5-1 on his odds, rounding at a trifecta that for 50 cents came back $114.87. Let's talk about the big boy, the big horse, Justify. He is 6 for 6 lifetime. He is the Triple Crown champion. He is just under $3.8 million in career earnings, owned by, get ready, long list here, China Horse Club International Limited, Windstar Farm, Starlight Racing, and Head of Plains Partners LLC, trained by Bob Baffert, now a 2-time Triple Crown winner, bred by John D. Gunther in the state of Kentucky, ridden to victory by Mike Smith, arguably no more deserving rider of an accolade such as the Triple Crown than Mike Smith, one of the true good guys in all of horse racing. And you can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He is by Scat Daddy out of a Ghost Zapper mare named Stage Magic. Let's talk a little bit about the figures before we go into all the storylines in this Belmont Stakes. Justify earns a 101 Beyer speed figure and a 125 Timeform US rating. Timeform US had the half mile and the mile calls color-coded red, meaning they were fast paces, possibly favoring horses coming from off of it and making it a little bit more difficult for horses forwardly placed, which, guess what? The most forward of them all was Justify throughout, which I think just really solidifies how impressive this effort was again from him. He got his final quarter mile in 25:28. The good news is he's never going to have to run a mile and a half again. The bad news for some of these other horses is it doesn't seem like Justify is going anywhere, because you hear Elliott Walden, you hear some of the other folks associated with this horse. It sounds like they would like to run him at least through the end of this year. I would be very surprised if you saw him as a 4-year-old. I suppose the only thing that would possibly bring him back for that would be a race like the Pegasus World Cup and the Dubai World Cup. But nonetheless, this horse is worth so much money right now. And if we can just get him through the rest of his 3-year-old campaign, I think we would all be very, very thrilled with that. Again, 6 for 6 lifetime. What he has accomplished really since the second week in February, wrap your mind around that. He's gone from a maiden to a Triple Crown winner. There have only been 13 of them ever. He's one of 13, and you look at the names that are on that list. He is really, I keep calling him an uncommon talent, and I think that's the best way to describe him. He's very uncommon, because this isn't something that we see, even from the best horses that we've seen throughout racing history. And I'm not ready to put him as far as a top 5 all-time or anything like that, but I think there's a legitimate case to be made that this is the greatest start to a career in racing history. I mean, can you think of another horse that has done anything remotely close to this to start their career? I can't. He went from a maiden on February 18th, I believe was his career debut. Broke his maiden. And here we are. This is being recorded on June the 11th. The race was on June the 9th. He's a Triple Crown winner. It's remarkable to see what this horse has done in such a short amount of time. And the continued brilliance of his performances. The only one that was a mild sweat was the Preakness, and truth be told, it didn't really ever look like he was in danger of losing that race. So I'm just blown away by this horse, and really it's difficult. I think I talked about it when we went over in the recap edition of this show for the Derby. The fact that, the whole Curse of Apollo thing and all that kind of stuff, it was just difficult to quantify and really put into context what this horse has accomplished in this short amount of time. That was after the Derby. And all he's done, 2 weeks later, he won the Preakness, and 3 weeks later, he came here and won the Belmont at 1.5 miles. It's difficult to put into perspective just how uncommon this is. I think this is really sort of one of the greatest beginnings to a career, if not the greatest, that we have ever seen and we probably ever will see. I think Andy Serling tweeted it on Saturday night. You're probably never going to see this ever again. Something like this, the way that this horse has gone, where he's essentially come from nowhere to win everything. He's just a very, very special talent, and I think credit belongs to the Connections for getting him ready to go and having him be at his best on the biggest stage against, by all indications, a pretty solid group of 3-year-olds. It'd be one thing if you thought that this was a subpar group. It seems like we have some legitimate quality with this generation, this group, this crop of 3-year-olds. And the fact that Justify has just come along and blitzed everyone, very, very impressive. Before we talk about each individual sort of horse that we need to talk about coming out of this, let's talk about what everyone seems to be talking about, which is kind of annoying to me. But I'll tell you why. People talk about restoring hope, and I will be the first one to say, look, I believe me, I heard from a number of you. I said it on Friday. Said he's not a likely winner, but I'm picking him. I'm going to take a shot. He didn't win. Fine. It is what it is. But more people are more interested in the way he was ridden by Florent Geroux. The idea, the notion of him being a blocker for Justify, when you see that he's hustled after breaking a little bit slowly, he's basically kept out 5-6 path going into the first turn. Many people think that is to prevent Noble Indy from clearing over, and then he comes over and basically gets himself into that beautiful stalking position in the 2-path, boxing in a horse like Bravazzo. The way that I'm looking at this whole thing, you hear different connections coming out and saying, we wish there was other pressure, the stewards should look into this, blah, 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 blah. To me, how different, and let's just use, and I'm not trying to make pick on anyone, but Mike Rapoli was very outspoken that he had said, I think the stewards will look into something like this, into Geroux's ride, and say, well, when you come out and you block a horse like that, this, that, and the other thing. And then he follows up the rest of that quote with talking about how Javier Castellano aboard Noble Indy did not ride Noble Indy to instruction, where the instruction was to go up and push Justify. Now, in theory, the reason you're pushing Justify is to help a horse like Vino Rosso, who Rapoli also owned, have a better opportunity to win the race. If I am, and I understand there's no common ownership between Justify and Restoring Hope, but they're both trained by Baffert. If I am riding Restoring Hope, or I've heard instructions, one way or the other, the idea is to, okay, let's just stay a little bit wide going into the first turn, be forward and stay wide. That's not Geroux's fault that a horse like Noble Indy wasn't ridden the way that they told him to ride. Do you want it just kind of handed over to you on silver platter? You kind of had to think that there might have been something going on. But then again, I'm looking at this from the perspective of the way that I laid it out on Friday. And if I'm betting the horse like I did, I think Geroux rode him the right way. The horse wasn't good enough, fine. But he ultimately had the perfect position. He sat just off of Justify's flank. And he got there when no one else seemed to want to. Noble Indy, if you wanted to make the front, you could have made the front. And I think that's the thing that people are saying, oh, well, at 1.5 miles, you would have just ruined the horse. You might have. You might have, but that's not the point. The point is, if you wanted to make the front, I know they went fast. The opening quarter was 23-1. If you wanted to make the front, you could have made the front. You would have been 6 wide going into the first turn, but you could have gone 22 and cleared off. You absolutely could have, but they didn't. So to me, it's a little bit of crying over spilt milk. It's a little bit of sour grapes where you're right. You didn't get the ride that you had hoped for, but then I don't think you can sit there and criticize another sort of connection or another rider for riding the way he was either told to ride or the way he thought was best to win the race. And again, I don't care if you think that he was 500-1 or he should have been 500-1. As someone that had a little bit of money with the horse, I thought he had the perfect position, Florent Geroux, on Restoring Hope. If you want to say, then all of a sudden, oh, he comes in and he boxes in bravado so Justify can be out there all by his lonesome. Again, if this is any other race, he's taken up the ideal stalking position. And just as much for his sake. And again, I realize there could be other things, but that's my point is, if I'm looking at it strictly from handicapping the race, he did everything that he was supposed to do. He got the horse out of there. He was a little bit slow from the gate, but he used him. Got him into a forward position. Horses had been winning pretty much on the lead or near the lead all day on the main track. And okay, and in the process, you box in one of your main competitors. Sure, the horse that you need to beat is in front of you, but realistically, you're not going to duel with him, and you're probably not nearly as good as him. I just think there's so many things going on here that it just feels like people are complaining just to complain. And let's just also, I guess another thing too, and again, I'm not trying to harp on anybody in particular, but Mike Rapoli just happens to be the owner of Vino Rosso. Vino Rosso had every opportunity. Going around the far turn, he rolls up, and he's right there off of Justify. And when he started being asked by Velasquez, there was nothing there. So, Vino Rosso was just very even throughout the rest of the real running of the race. To me, I think it's just an instance where Justify, people are saying we would have loved to have seen someone go and pressure him. Well, sure. Well, everyone had an opportunity to go and pressure him, but no one did. So I can just sit there and point fingers and say, well, if they had gone, we would have had a better chance. That you can say that with any race on any given day. If this horse had gone, oh man, this race could have been totally different. It could have, but it didn't work out that way. It is what it is. And let's be honest, too. As someone I didn't pick Justify, but he was very clearly, very obviously the best horse in the race. And I tried to make that abundantly clear, but some people just don't hear. He was probably going to win anyway. If you went and tried to push him, like Good Magic did 3 weeks prior, and I think it was the right call from Jose Ortiz, but you saw what happened. You tried to push him, and it ended up costing him an entire placing in the race. Forget about trying to win. I don't know. There are just some things there that it just felt like, and really the aftermath, the folks in social media, this has just turned into a thing. It's incredible to me. When really, let's talk about the horse that won the Triple Crown some more, and the way that he did it. It is what it is. I mean, you're never going to make everyone happy, and people are always going to have issues with certain things. But let's talk about some of the other individual horses anyway. Justify already made it known how impressed I am with him. I would imagine the Haskell is going to be the next step. I would imagine after that, probably the Pennsylvania Derby and then the Breeders' Cup Classic. That would be just a guess. There is nothing out there just yet, but knowing Baffert, knowing the way that he normally likes to go, the path to a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic, that to me seems like it would be the most logical run. Gronkowski, I was very impressed. I discounted this horse going into it. I just said he looks good on dirt and training, but it's a totally different animal. He's facing much better horses than he's ever faced. 1.5 miles, first time over here, X, Y, and Z. I thought for a hot minute, turning for home, if he had changed leads a little earlier, I wonder if he gets a little bit closer. I don't think he was ever going to win. But this was a tremendous effort from Gronkowski. 99 buyer, 123 time form US rating. You give him a little bit more, you give Chad Brown more time with this horse. I think Gronkowski's very, very interesting. Now, the concern has to be his running style. And I'm sure Chad will, try to do something with that. I'm not sure how that works as far as training a horse to have more speed. But to me, he's just the kind of horse that he's going to need to be a lot closer than he was in the Belmont. But I'm not holding that against him for this race. This was an unbelievable effort from him, a great ride from Jose Ortiz, and a great training job from Chad to have this horse run as well as he did. in his first start in the States and only be beaten by Justify by a length and 3/4 coming from dead last. I thought it was a really, really impressive effort and something that he can certainly build on going forward. Hofburg, I don't want to say it was a disappointing effort. It was just, it felt like if anybody was going to really have the opportunity to take a shot against Justify, it would have been him. And he took his shot, but he wasn't even any match for Gronkowski. So he's going to still need to improve. I guess I'm mildly disappointed with this. I expected a little bit better effort. Wasn't bad by any stretch. I think this was the fastest race actually of his career. 97 Beyer, 122 time form US rating. But I just expected a little bit more from him. He was a little early with the lead change as well. But Hofburg, I'm still high on him. I still think he's going to be a good horse down the road. Vino Rosso, I'm starting to lose a little bit of faith in him. He feels a little bit to me like he is too much of a plotter, where, you know, you need a lot of things to go your way if it's going to work. I'm not totally discrediting him or discounting him. I would imagine if they show up for a race like the Travers, he'll be interesting. I believe it. Pletcher had said that they may train him up to it. We'll wait and see. I think he ran just fine, but fine, that's all. If I'm taking anyone else out of the rest of these horses, by the way, Blended Citizen was wider than wide. He's probably not that good anyway, but don't hold this against him. Restoring Hope, certainly not this good anyway. I thought he had a perfect trip, and it just didn't work out for him one way or the other. And again, if you believe other things were going on, that's your opinion. I don't believe that, but whatever. Free Drop Billy, he still has just not improved. Noble Indy, he was no good in this race to begin with, but again, if you believe he wasn't ridden the way that he was supposed to be ridden, which, by the way, would have been strictly as a rabbit, it is what it is. I still think Noble Indy's okay, but this race has got to be a little bit of a concern considering he backed up as badly as he did. The two horses that I haven't spoke of are Bravazzo and Tenfold. Bravazzo, I do wonder if Preakness, again, was the time to have him, and also did the wet track move him up? More importantly, Tenfold. I was a little chilly on Tenfold coming into this race, the Belmont Stakes. Coming out of this race, I'm much higher on him. I thought this was a really good effort because, to me, he is the only horse in this entire race that I can sit there and say, I think he had legitimate trouble. Where going into the first turn, it was in tight when Restoring Hope was sent on that mission to try to get up there and establish position. He was in a little bit tight. Rounding the first turn, he was down on the inside, had to check real quick. Ricardo Santana did. Down the backside, he was able to relax a little bit, but then when they started really running in the far turn, he was stuck in behind a wall of horses, had to angle down to the inside, had a little bit of trouble there, and then had to angle 4 or 5 paths off the far turn and just stayed on evenly. To me, you get him shorter distances than this, probably 1 1/8, maybe 1 1/4. I think Tenfold's really interesting coming out of this race. I didn't like him here. I do like him going forward. I think he might be the horse, obviously, with the exception of Justify and the obvious players. I think Tenfold could be the one that maybe we see a big move forward as he continues to mature. Keep in mind, I believe this is only start number 5 in his entire career. So I think Tenfold has a big sort of future ahead of him in the upcoming weeks. I'd imagine we see him at Saratoga at some point. But at the end of the day, this race boiled down to the best horse having the best trip, with the best connections, really, as far as the Triple Crown is concerned. Hard to argue with Bob Baffert right now with 2 Triple Crowns in 4 years, considering we hadn't had one for 37 years prior to American Pharoah. I don't want to compare the two horses right now. Maybe I'll do that on Friday with the preview edition, comparing Justify and American Pharoah and how they've got to the point that they've gotten to at this point anyway, through the Triple Crown. But it is really hard. Anyone that's sitting there saying he had a soft trip, who did he beat, blah, 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 that's dumb. That's dumb. I've made it clear that the Triple Crown is not my favorite thing, but it's still a tremendous accomplishment. And I think Justify just goes to show what he has accomplished in such a short amount of time, with no seasoning, with no foundation. He's truly an uncommon talent, a very special talent. Justify beats Gronkowski, who finishes ahead of Hofburg in the 150th Belmont Stakes. Justify with a 101 Beyer speed figure and a 125 time form US rating for the 13th Triple Crown champion in American racing history. Let's move on to the Manhattan, a Grade 1 event on turf for older horses. You had a nice field assembled here. You could go a few different ways. Field of 13, actually, when it all was said and done. Your favorite was Beach Patrol, bet down to odds of 9-5 in a very salty field. A horse that ran decent enough in the Turf Classic at Churchill Downs on Derby Day. You'd expect a forward move here, but you could go so many different ways. Wouldn't have surprised anyone to see a decent number, a decent price win this thing. That's ultimately what happened. Graham Motion's got a little bit of a habit of being an upsetter in the Manhattan. Here's the stretch run from Larry Colmus.
Julio, a big long shot, turning for home in front. Manitoulin on the outside comes on second. High Happy third toward the inside. Sadler's Joy is closing down the center of the course. And here he comes, trying to get these front runners. And Sadler's Joy has taken the lead, but from far, far behind, Spring Quality is closing down the center. And it's going to be Spring Quality to get up and win.
Spring Quality at odds of 18-1 gets the job done over Sadler's Joy, who is rock solid, shows up with his effort each and every time. Sadler's Joy was 5-1 behind the 18-1 winner Spring Quality, and High Happy for Todd Pletcher rounds out your trifecta at odds of 9-2. This race really boiled down to trips and ultimately performances. I mean, obviously performances, but trips went a long way in this spot. First things first, let's talk about the winner a little bit. Spring Quality. He's 6 of 11 lifetime, 9 times in the exacta, over $860,000 in career earnings, owned by Augustin Stable, trained by Graham Motion, bred by George Strawbridge Jr. in Pennsylvania, ridden to victory by Edgar Prado. You can see the pedigree at the bottom of the page. Quality Road is the sire. The dam is Spring Star, and she is by Deputy Minister. Spring Quality, a 102 buyer and a 127 Timeform US rating. These buyers and Timeform US ratings, considering how bunched up this field was at the end, they're all pretty darn close. You've got numbers varying between 102 and dropping all the way down to, about a 98, something in that ballpark. Spring Quality, a 102. Sadler's Joy, a 102. High Happy, Manitoulin, Fashion Business, all with 101s. Robert Bruce, Hello Don Julio, Channel Maker, all with 100 buyers. From a Timeform US standpoint, Spring Quality, a 127. Sadler's Joy, a 127. High Happy and Manitoulin, 128s. Fashion Business and Robert Bruce, 126s. To Hello Don Julio, 127. All over the map. But they're all pretty darn close. It's a compact grouping as far as the difference between fastest and slowest, but they do change all over the place, especially from a Timeform US standpoint. Timeform US, for what it's worth, 3/4 and mile splits, both color-coded red, meaning it was fast, favoring horses on or near the early lead. Perhaps you want to upgrade a horse like High Happy and Manitoulin. That's why they got the faster Timeform US ratings, because Timeform US factors in the pace and how things shape up, as opposed to Spring Quality and Sadler's Joy, who both had the run of the race, basically coming from the back of the pack. Let's talk about the trips, though. Spring Quality, it was a very patient ride from Edgar Prado. Waited, tipped out into the clear, basically followed Sadler's Joy, and then angled out into the clear about 8 path off the far turn. Finished very, very well. That's the difference between making a clean run and having some of these other more troubled trips, whether it be a horse like, well, let's start off with the trouble as far as traffic is concerned. Channel Maker, I think, is at the top of the list as far as traffic is concerned, where at the top of the lane, you've got Jose Ortiz looking for somewhere to go, but he's got 2 fistful of dynamite. Eventually, he tries to let him loose, but there's a wall in front of him. He's pulling hard on the right rein, trying to get him into the clear. When it was all said and done, the horse ran at the end. And he's a prime example, prime horse that you want to put in your DRF horse watch wherever he shows up next, because it's not going to look like a good running line. I know everybody saw it, but there's still people that are going to look at Channel Maker and say he's Channel Maker. He usually finds 1 or 2 better than him. I think this was a good effort. I've always been a little bit of a fan of the horse, but to me, this is a much, much better effort than it looks, certainly on paper, just because of the trouble. And he's going to be a little bit dirty as far as the form is concerned, so he's one to keep an eye on. I thought Robert Bruce, I liked him in this spot, and I thought he ran really well. He was in tight beneath Gaffel Leon. They got bounced around at the top of the lane. Wouldn't have faulted him at all for folding. Instead, what does he do? He rallies down the lane, finishes really well, gallops out ahead of the entire field. To me, of all the horses coming out of a race like this, he is right up there at the top of the list, Robert Bruce. I think you're going to hear he's going to make some noise down the road. I don't know which races he'll show up in, but I think Robert Bruce proves that he's a legitimate talent. He had a troubled trip in here, much better than what the 6th place finish will look like on paper. Another horse, not necessarily a troubled trip, but a miserably wide trip, was Manitoulin. The fact that Manitoulin finished as close as he did to winning this thing, and basically a 5-horse photo, it speaks volumes of how impressive this effort was, because he's 6 paths wide going into the first turn, 5 paths wide down the backside, 4 paths wide around the far turn, and he stays right on and he finishes very, very gamely. This was another giant effort from him. And you wonder, these extended distances, this is probably all Manitoulin's wanted all along. These sort of 1.25 mile, 1.5 races as opposed to being kept to those shorter distances. Giant effort from him. If you think that he's going to come back in a spot that'll be a little bit more advantageous, he's certainly a major player in a spot like this. You can go a couple different ways. Sadler's Joy, again, he runs with his race each and every time, shows up with that big late kick. A little bit disappointing that he couldn't get the job done, but again, a horse with arguably a better trip benefited Spring Quality. High Happy's rock solid for Pletcher. Distance isn't a problem. That tactical speed's always going to make him dangerous in a spot like this. Fashion Business, He ran much better than I thought he would for Phil D'Amato coming in from Southern California, but there's still a part of me that thinks that this, of all the horses that were in that blanket, I kind of feel like he's more the mirage than anything else, but perhaps he's just finally putting it all together, and these longer distance races are actually what he's wanted all along. Hello, Don Julio. He was forwardly placed. Basically want to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's probably not this good, and he was up there on that fast pace. The disaster of this race was Beach Patrol. And you got to wonder coming out of this, where do we go with him? Because you saw he popped to his left lead there at the top of the lane, and he just folded really badly. And let's just knock on wood, hope everything is okay. But this was far and away the worst effort of his career. And boy, you look and see that effort at Churchill. It was okay, not great, but not terrible. This was terrible at what was supposed to be his bread and butter from a distance standpoint. I would have to think long and hard before backing him wherever he shows up. Of the Chad Brown horses coming out of this race, I'd take Robert Bruce every day of the week. And there are a number of other horses I would take ahead of Beach Patrol in the next start. So let's just hope everything is okay with him, because we know at his best he's very, very talented. This race, you can always look at it and say a blanket finish usually is indicative of a negative race. I thought this was a pretty big effort from a couple of the horses. But again, trouble went a long way. And I do wonder if a horse like Manitoulin could have saved some ground. If Robert Bruce had clean run, if Channelmaker had clean run, do they finish at least closer to spring quality, if not ahead of him, and then possibly stretch out a little bit? Who knows? It is what it is. That's all you can do, is try to go back and use what you have from a video standpoint and from a figure standpoint and use that to your advantage going forward. Spring quality is the winner of the Manhattan. This is 2 years in a row. Graham Motion gets the job done with a little bit of an outsider from an odds standpoint. Odds of 18-1. Spring quality, a 102 buyer and a 127 time form US rating, winning the Manhattan. You know, sometimes there are races before their run. They look like, on paper anyway, about 10 different horses can win. The Met Mile this year was sort of that example. Let's take a look at the field. You had 11 signed on, and it really felt like 3/4 of the field had a legitimate chance of winning. And it's easy for me to sit here right now and say, in hindsight, really there were two horses that sort of, let's be honest, they kind of stood out from everyone else. It's, again, easy for me to sit here and say this now. But you had two horses in Mind Your Biscuits and B Jersey that from a figure standpoint were the fastest in the race. From a recency standpoint, they made the most sense just based on the form that they were in. The question came down to running style. B Jersey figured to be forwardly placed, outright on the lead more likely than not. And Mind Your Biscuits was going to be mid-pack toward the rear, trying to come with a run similar to the one that we saw in the Dubai Golden Shaheen. The rest of the field, you had some quality runners, but they needed to prove that they could run as fast as those couple horses, whether it was a Good Samaritan or a Ransom the Moon or a McCracken. And the other thing with some of these horses, too, they had to factor in was distance. A horse like Limousine Liberal, could he get out to a mile? A horse like Bolt Doro, the 3-year-old taking on Elders, would this be a positive move for him, going a one-turn mile? Ultimately, it turned into an absolute war between two horses. Down the lane, it was Mind Your Biscuits and B Jersey. Larry Coleman with the call of the Met Mile.
The stretch. B Jersey holding on to the lead after 3/4 in 109.28. He kicks clear length. Mind Your Biscuits is running after him. Limousine Liberal takes third on the inside. Final furlong. B Jersey and Mind Your Biscuits to fight it out in the Run Happy Met Mile. Mind Your Biscuits trying to get B Jersey late. They come to the line, and B Jersey holds off Mind Your Biscuits.
B Jersey prevails by a nose over Mind Your Biscuits. They both just put on an absolute show. And they are 5 1/4 lengths clear of the third place finisher, Limousine Liberal, who, you know what, Ben Colebrook, I doubted the move to run him here. I will admit when I'm wrong. Clap of the hands. Limousine Liberal rounds out your trifecta, running third. And fourth, if you really wanted to get crazy, was Discreet Lover at odds of nearly 80-1, rounding out your superfecta that for 10 cents came back $514 and some change. Let's talk about the winner, though, B Jersey. He gets it done by a nose over Mind Your Biscuits. He's 5 of 10 lifetime, 9 times in the money from 10 lifetime starts, just under $977,000 in career earnings, owned and bred by Chuck Fipke in the state of Kentucky, trained by Steve Asmussen, ridden to victory by Ricardo Santana Jr., and you can see the pedigree. He is by one of my favorites, if not my favorite of all time, Jersey Town. He's out of a Rahi mare named Bees. B Jersey. I like the name. 109 buyer speed figure and 130 time form US rating for each of the top two, for B Jersey and Mind Your Biscuits. B Jersey comes home in 23.85, Mind Your Biscuits 23.52. This really did come down to a tactical difference, because if you think there was a scenario where B Jersey took a little bit more heat early, perhaps Mind Your Biscuits can turn the table on him. Because he's able to get out there, and for him, a very talented horse is able to set, I don't want to say a tepid sort of pace, But when you go through and break it down incrementally, I mean, it's not like he was going guns blazing, but he was going at a legitimate clip. Perhaps that was the difference that enabled him to prevail by a nose. Also worth noting, I'm not a big weight guy, but when it comes down to a nose, I have to look at it and say, B Jersey at 118 as opposed to Mind Your Biscuits at 122. 4 pounds for a nose, I'll buy into that. I liked B Jersey in here. I thought he ran a bang-up race. I think Ricardo Santana Jr. is one of the best riders that doesn't get the pub that he deserves in the country. And Steve Asmussen, I'm not breaking any news here. He's one of the best trainers in the country. There's really no question about it. What he did with Gunrunner, what he's done with some other really talented horses in the past. You've got Curlin, you've got Rachel Alexandra, and now what he's doing with a horse like B Jersey. He just really a tremendous training job. Tremendous training job from Chad Summers with Mind Your Biscuits, considering it seems like he's done his best running at 3/4, at 7/8, and now they pump him out to that mile, and he's right there. He almost gets it down the nose. I think there is a lot on the table now for each of the top 2 runners going forward. Now, here is where you need to make a little bit of a call on what you think is the overall field here. Those top 2 were a country mile clear of everyone else. And the third place finisher was arguably a horse that distance-wise, this is too far for him. What does that mean for the rest of this field? I can go through a couple different spots. Let's hope that Discreet Lover is okay. I believe he was vanned off after the race. It sounded like it was going to be okay, but knock on wood, and stay tuned to live.drf.com and drf.com just in general for all the latest updates. Hopefully, again, everything is okay there. Limousine Liberal, I think you get him back to 7/8 of a mile. He'll be much better at that distance than a flat mile. Ransom the Moon, same story, 6.5, 7 furlongs back in Southern California. Think he fits really well there. McCracken and Good Samaritan, and Awesome Slew. Awesome Slew was probably the biggest disappointment of the race. He was just kind of flat throughout, really never offered much. I still think this is his game, though. 7/8, 1-turn mile. McCracken, I hate to say it, I just don't think he's this good. I think he's talented, and I think there are races for him. I just don't know that he's truly a grade 1 caliber horse at this point in his career. Good Samaritan, I sound like a broken record. Every time I talk about him in one of these races, I still think he is better on turf. I've been saying it for months. I think he is a better turf horse than a dirt horse. I understand there is more money to be had on dirt, but I'm at the point now where after this race and after that run at Churchill, if I'm part of the connections, if I'm part of Windstar and company, his next race is on turf. I need to get him back to a surface that I think he can be best suited for. And to me, that's pretty much a no-brainer, in my opinion. It's turf. I think he is a much better turf horse than a dirt horse. One-liner, I just don't think he's quite this good. Bolt Doro, you've got to look at it and say, I don't want to say ruined, but boy, this horse has had a lot of things go against him in these past 2 starts, the Met Mile and the Kentucky Derby. The Derby, I think a tactical mistake was made. You shouldn't have been up there trying to push the pace. You should have tried to sit back and make a run. The wet track, I don't think that really bothered him. His 2 runs out in Southern California prior to the Derby, I thought were both very good. This race was a disaster, and you just wonder, does it take too much out of him? Because you look at the way the pace worked out in this race, and here I am saying it wasn't a blistering pace, but it was an honest pace. B Jersey was out there, and then really, you had Bolt Doro and you had One-Liner, and they finished 9th and 11th in a field of 11. So that just makes B Jersey's effort that much more impressive. I fear for Bolt Doro. I think he is still a very, very talented horse. I think he needs a confidence booster. And I think at this point right now, I don't know that it'll happen. But if I had the horse, let's find a race. Timing-wise, maybe the calendar is off, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have any other suggestions, throw them in the comment section below on the YouTube video or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. I would run Bolt Doro. This may sound silly. In one of those sort of Midwest races, run him in the Indiana Derby, run him in the Ohio Derby, one of those races. And if he can't win those, then you know what, we've got a bigger problem here. But to me, that would be a very good sort of stepping stone. Forget about the Haskell for right now. Try to get a race like that into him, and then if you can build on that, get that confidence back, and then run in a race like the Travers or something along those lines. But right now, if you just keep throwing him to the deep end, I think you're just doing this horse a disservice. He's too talented. He deserves better. It was ambitious, but hey, their horse, do what you want, take a shot. Clearly, we've got to go back to the drawing board. To me, get a confidence booster into him, and then try one of those other big races. But until then, don't go back to the deep end because this horse needs to get back on the right track because right now he's going the wrong way. The top two horses are going the right way. I think the sky is the limit for both of them. B Jersey and Mind Your Biscuits. Tough break if you're a Mind Your Biscuits fan or you're part of the connection is losing by a nose. He ran a winning race, no question about it. But B Jersey, he wins the Met Mile by a nose over Mind Your Biscuits. Each of them earned 109 buyers and 130 Timeform US ratings. Turf race, it's got to be Chad Brown's world, right? Grade 1, just a game for fillies and mares going a mile on the outer turf course. Let's take a look at the field. 8 of them were signed on in here. Your post-time favorite was Off Limits, one of the other Chad runners in this spot at odds of 9-5. Her running style, I think, probably ended up being a little bit of a compromising factor. We'll touch on that a little bit more momentarily. But the other Chad in here, really, a raving beauty. She came over here. She was visually very impressive when she won her stateside debut, and she was going to take a little bit of money in here. She ultimately went off as the second choice, and she prevailed pretty impressively. Larry Colmus with the stretch run.
Off the turn in front, Cambodia closing fast on the outside, a Raving Beauty. Now a Raving Beauty moves up alongside of Lull. Cambodia continues to gain. Proctor's Ledge is on the inside. Off Limits is closing down the center of the course, and then it's on leave. A Raving Beauty has the lead close to home. It's a Raving Beauty from Proctor's Ledge. A Raving Beauty wins it. Proctor's Ledge was second.
A Raving Beauty gets the job done for Chad at odds of 7-2, defeats Proctor's Ledge, who was very game, finishing second beneath John Velasquez, and then Lull, the pace setter, ends up running third for Christophe Clement and Jose Ortiz at odds of 9-2. Let's talk more about the winner, A Raving Beauty. The German bred, she's 5 of 19 lifetime, over $694,000 in career earnings. Owned by Michael Dubb, Madicket Stables LLC, and Bethlehem Stables LLC. Trained by Chad Brown. Bred by Gestut Garlshof in Germany. I hope, again, apologies if I mispronounced that. Ridden to victory by Arad Ortiz Jr., and you can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. She is by Master Craftsman out of a high chaparral mare named Anabasis. 100 buyer speed figure, 126 Timeform US rating for a Raving Beauty. Timeform US had the 3/4 split color-coded red, meaning it was fast, possibly favoring horses coming from a little bit off of it, compromising horses forwardly placed. I'm going to kindly disagree, though, with that statement that I just made. That is sort of the general rule of thumb. This turf course at Belmont has been quite speed-friendly, so I think it just enhanced the horses that had a little bit of tactical speed and compromised the likes of Off Limits and On Leave. A Raving Beauty, though, she's really done nothing wrong. The concern I have, final quarter mile, 23:07. Go back and watch that stretch run again. Just before the wire, she pops back to her left lead. I never, ever, ever like to see that. I'm not saying that it just immediately means that I'm going to throw her out next time wherever she shows up, but I would think long and hard about it because this race here, you saw how tightly packed this field was at the wire. I think it was a good group. I think they're all talented middle distance horses. You've got to think that many of them, knock on wood, they're going to be looking at a race like the Breeders' Cup Mile when it's all said and done. I think there's a lot of quality in here, and again, maybe they're not quite Breeders' Cup quality, but I think a couple of them might be. And again, distance-wise, you know, at the end of the day, you're looking at races like the Matriarch at the end of the year out at Del Mar, but there are plenty of other instances between now and then. You've got races in New York. You've got races all over the place that you can run these type of horses in. A Raving Beauty, she's very talented. Very talented. Hard to argue with that. I was dubious of her coming over because she had been running in Italy and Germany. And usually that's sort of the B string as far as Europe is concerned. But boy, she's just taken her game to another level. 100 buyer, 126 Timeform US rating. Good effort from Proctor's Ledge again. She won that distaff mile at Churchill on Derby Day. She comes back here, runs another bang-up race. 97 buyer, 125 Timeform US rating. Lull, she ran well, but I think she had a lot of things go in her favor where she was just basically out there by herself on the front end. I don't think Jose Ortiz could have done anything differently. I just don't think she was as good as the top two in here. She earns a 97 and a 126 Timeform US rating. Now is when you sift through sort of the next horses and decide what do you think of them overall. I liked Off Limits in here. I think she was compromised by the speed-friendly turf course. I've already put her in my DRF horse watch because I think when she shows up, whether it's a race up at Saratoga or it's somewhere else, I think she's going to have a major player or major opportunity to get the job done. The concern now becomes, though, I think she is a flat miler. And now, how many races are there at a flat mile for the older fillies and mares, unless you try to go on and face the males? So we'll find out. I think Off Limits ran a little bit better than it may look here. And On Leave, as much as I would like to say the same thing, she's still on leave. And On Leave usually finds a few better than her. I think she's a nice horse, but I don't think she's as talented as the top few in here. Cambodia, I hate to say it, I think she has certainly gone the wrong way, and you have to wonder if at 6 years old, maybe she's just not what she was when we saw her last year. But no question about it. Again, it's a grade 1. It's a turf race. Chad Brown. He's going to be well represented. We know the story by now. Chad and Irad Ortiz, they get the job done. They team up to win the grade 1 Just a Game with a raving beauty. 100 buyer, 126 time form U.S. rating. 3-year-old fillies in the one-turn grade 1 Acorn. $700,000, excuse me, was the purse. This is the field. Only 6 of them were going to go postward in race number 4 on Saturday afternoon at Belmont Park, mainly because of the presence of the big girl, Monomoy Girl. The Grade 1 Kentucky Oaks winner, the Grade 1 Ashland winner. She really has done nothing wrong in her career. She's versatile. She can do so many things, and it felt like this one-turn mile was going to hit her right between the eyes. Outside of her, you had to make some calls if you wanted to try to go against her. You had Caledonia Road, the winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies last year. You had Talk Vuv to Me, who looks like talent-wise, she's right up there with some of the best 3-year-old fillies that we have in this crop. You had Moonshine Memories, who was the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies last year. None of the competition mattered. This was all Monomoy Girl. Larry Colmus with the call.
Top of the stretch, 3/4, 110.34, and here comes Monomoy Girl, right by Talk Vuv to Me. Monomoy Girl, the Kentucky Oaks winner, has taken charge here, and she's pulling away in the Acorn. A 4-length lead. Talk Vuv to Me is second, Geo Game third, Monomoy Girl, home on top in the Acorn.
Much too much for the rest. Monomoy Girl, she gets the job done by 2 lengths as your 3-5 favorite in the Grade 1 Acorn. Talk Vuv to Me, she ran a winning race. Very impressed with her effort here. She runs second at odds of 4-1. And Geo Game, big effort from her at odds of 24-1, the second longest shot on the board. She runs third to round out your trifecta. Your trifecta for 50 cents came back $10.20, simply because everybody and their brother liked Monomoy Girl. Let's talk about her a little bit more. She's 7 of 8 lifetime. She's never been out of the exacta from 8 lifetime starts. Just under $1.5 million in career earnings. She's owned by Michael Dubb, Monomoy Stables LLC, the Elkstone Group LLC, and Bethlehem Stables LLC, trained by Brad Cox, bred by FPF LLC in Highfield Ranch in Kentucky. Ridden victory by Florent Giroux in the pedigree at the bottom of the page. She is by Tapazar out of a Henny Hughes mare named Drumette. From a figure standpoint, 98 buyer. 120 time form U.S. rating for Monomoy Girl, winning the Grade 1 Acorn. Half mile and 3/4 splits according to time form U.S. color-coded blue, meaning favored horses on or near the early lead. Monomoy Girl doesn't matter. She's so versatile. I love the fact that she can go to the lead if it's given to her. She can sit off and come with a little bit of a run, as she did in this spot here. And that was off of a relatively slow pace when you look at the fractions. 23 for the quarter, 46-2 for a half, 10-1 for 3/4. I just think she is incredibly talented. She got her final quarter in 23:59. She is much the best as far as 3-year-old fillers are concerned, in my opinion. It sounds like she's only going to run 2 more times before the Breeders' Cup Distaff. So we'll see ultimately where those races are. I'd imagine one of them will be up at Saratoga. If not 2 of them, who knows? We'll find out. There's a long way to go before we get to that point. But Monomoy Girl, I mean, she is head and shoulders above everybody else as far as 3-year-olds are concerned for fillies. Talk Vuv to Me, from a talent standpoint, though, she is very, very good. The concern I have with her, I don't think additional distance works for her. I think she is a sprinter, so perhaps you're looking at a race like the Test for her. But talent-wise, she is very, very good. She is in that, if Monomoy Girl's here, Talk Vuv to Me is in that just slight ring below her. Some of the other more disappointing efforts in here, though, certainly Moonshine Memories and Caledonia Road. Caledonia Road, I mentioned it in the preview, and I mentioned it on this show, I believe. I was concerned that she changed the leads as late as she did in that comeback, that non-winners of 2 other than. And I get that she needed a race, but she'd been gone because of an injury. And usually, I'm telling you, take note of that kind of stuff, where when they do everything professionally and then they have an injury and they're gone for a long time, and when they come back, all of a sudden they do something mechanically different than they had done in the past. That, to me, is usually a major red flag. Now, perhaps Caledonia Road can come back and she'll end up being better than ever down the road, but this was a really, really poor effort. Moonshine Memories, I was wrong. I thought she was sitting on a big effort, and it just looks like she may have been the precocious 2-year-old, and she just has not progressed. She has not turned over here as the 3-year-old, because this was a disappointing effort. She was forwardly placed, pressing those fractions, and when the real running started, she backed it up badly. But there's no denying that the top 2 were certainly the best in this race, but the winner, far and away, the best 3-year-old filly that there is in the country, Monomoy Girl. She gets the job done in the Grade 1 Acorn. 98 buyer, 120 time form U.S. rating, and you got to start thinking, going to be really difficult for any other 3-year-old filly to take away the divisional honors from her come Eclipse Awards time. Last race we'll recap here on this week's edition of the Matt Bernier Show. The recap edition will be, as far as I'm concerned, probably the most impressive effort from Belmont Stakes Day. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 1 Ogden Phipps. $750,000 is the purse. You had a field of 6 signed on. The question about this race, it boiled down to which version of Abel Tasman were we going to get? Were we going to get the horse that ran in the La Troyenne so badly? And I'm not mincing words here. She was terrible. God awful. Were we going to get that version? Or were we going to get the horse that nearly won the Breeders' Cup Distaff last year as a 3-year-old? Because if you got that version, simply put, she's going to win. If you got the La Troyenne version, simply put, she was going to probably finish off the board. Good news for all involved. We got the good version. Larry Colmus with the stretch run of the first Grade 1 on Belmont Stakes Day, the Ogden Phipps.
Tasman yet to be set down here, trying to shake away from Pacific Wind and Ivy Bell, who's down toward the inside. Unbridled Moe's in the center trying to make a bid, and then comes Unchained Melody, but Abel Tasman's running away from them here. Abel Tasman and Mike Smith, far too good, and they're pouring it on late. A spectacular performance in the Ogden Phipps by Abel Tasman.
Abel Tasman back to her best form. She wins the Ogden Phipps at odds of even money. The runner-up is Ivy Bell, 7.5 lengths behind Abel Tasman. She finishes second at odds of 7-1. And Unbridled Mo, the other Pletcher entrant, runs third at odds of 9-2. Let's take a look at Abel Tasman. She is 7 of 13 lifetime, 11 times in the money, over $2.4 million in career earnings now. Owned by China Horse Club International Limited and Clear Sky Farms. Trained by Bob Baffer, bred by Clear Sky Farms in Kentucky. Ridden to victory by Mike Smith. You see the pedigree at the bottom of the page. Another Grade 1 winner for Quality Road. And she's out of a deputy minister merit named Vargas Girl. 100 buyer speed figure, 125. Time form U.S. rating for Abel Tasman. She came home in 30-31. This, to me, was the good Abel Tasman. I'm not breaking any news there. This was the filly that nearly won the Breeders' Cup Distaff last year. You watch her going down the backside early. She's a little bit farther back, 2-3 lengths off of it. She very quickly, though, makes that brush up. We've seen it so many times from her. And you have to get to a certain point where you say, okay, maybe it's not ideal, but maybe it's just her. Where when she wants to go, she goes. And rather than fight her, Mike Smith, let her do her thing, and you know what? It pays off, because when she can finish that way, the way that she did on Saturday afternoon, there are very few fillies or mares that can beat her. And, the fascinating thing going forward, and no disrespect to the other girls in this race, they're all really nice fillies, and they're going to have opportunities to run in big races down the road. But when you see Abel Tasman, you can tell she's in a class, above and beyond the rest of them. But then it makes you think, if the good Abel Tasman shows up, if Unique Bella shows up, if Monomoy Girl shows up, and if any of these other fillies and mares blossoms over the next handful of months, the distaff, even if no other horses show up, those 3 girls right there, they could put on an absolute show. And the good news is, 2 of them are Oaks winners. You know that they can handle Churchill Downs. That's not going to be a problem. We'll find out about Unique Bella with all of her little quirks, nuances here and there, but boy, Abel Tasman, to me, this was a fascinating, awesome performance. I loved everything about it, the way that she powered home. I'm just happy to see that we got her back to the good form, because I was one of the most vocal people saying she was terrible on Derby weekend. What the hell happened? She was awesome last year as a 3-year-old. Where did this come from? And then she comes back here and she just says, you know what? I got it. Maybe she really just needed one all along. This was a giant effort from Abel Tasman, and good to see her get back to her winning ways. Again, not trying to, no disrespect to anybody else in this field, but they are all a notch or two below the best of the best. Abel Tasman, she's going to be, if she stays in this sort of form, she's going to be a major player come Breeders' Cup Distaff time in November beneath the Twin Spires. Abel Tasman wins the Grade 1 Ogden Phipps, 100 buyer, 125 time form U.S. rating. That's going to do it as far as the recaps are concerned. There are just way too many stakes races to cram in for this week's show. So this week's stakes montage, as I take a look at it right now, it might be ballparking at 15 stretch runs deep. You're going to have Belmont Park very clearly. You're going to have a Santa Anita race. You'll also have a couple of races from Woodbine as well. Without further ado, let's go into this week's stakes montage.
outside of them, and Thundering Skies on her outside, and they're into the stretch. Fabian arrives at the 8th pole with La Sardane running up alongside and running on by. Malibu Stacy's down toward the inside. Stormy Victoria still bottled up near the back of the field. Final 16th, La Sardane in front. On the inside, Fabian fights on. Heavenly Score third. It is La Sardane to win the Intercontinental. La Signare, and Daddy is a Legend is moving up on their outside, and Dina Del Sur is down toward the rail. Significant form on the outside of a stubborn La Signare, who keeps the lead in the final furlong. La Signare on the inside, trying to fend off Significant Form. Late Speed coming down toward the inside from Mighty Scarlet down to the line. La Signare held on to win. Significant Form outside. Athens Queen gets into the mix too. Lady Apple cuts the corner. Eye in the Sky is 5 deep and trying to charge down the center. Meanwhile, Athens Queen has taken the lead. Eye in the Sky closes on the outside. Tajori is there. Lady Apple fights on from the rail. It's Athens Queen. Here's Lady Apple on the inside. Eye in the Sky and Tajori down to the line. Athens Queen in the Astoria. To the inside. Sister Charlie's getting going now as these top two start to fade here with a furlong to run. Fahan Mora still there. And on the outside is a skis. 4-Star Crook revs up alongside of them. Sister Charlie's coming. Then Holy Helena. And it is 4-Star Crook. Sister Charlie goes to her inside. And 4-Star Crook's going to hold on and beat Sister Charlie. And they're into the stretch. And here's Imperial Hint and Bobby Abu Dhabi. And these two have taken over. Whitmore trying to come and get them. Recruiting ready is thrown in the towel. Then always Sunshine. It's Imperial Hint coming into the final 16th in front. Bobby Abu Dhabi and Whitmore closing on the outside. Imperial Hint's got it close to home from Whitmore. Imperial Hint wins the True North. Whitmore was second. Bobby Abu Dhabi was called to mind off the turn in front in the Belmont Gold Cup. The leader by 2 lengths with 1 furlong to go. Prince of Aaron is second on the outside. And trying to close the gap, Rocketry is third. And then Kenessar, called to mind, keeps the lead in the final 16th. And coming to the finish, called to mind in the colors of the Queen. Wins it by a length. They're into the stretch. Lewis Bay off the turn, opening up 2.5. Highway Star is second. Then Divine Miss Gray, K-Ren, and Not Today for American Gal. A furlong to go, and Lewis Bay is long gone. Lewis Bay and Irad Ortiz Jr. running up the score down to the wire to win the Bed of Roses. Highway Star was second. K-Ren was third, and Divine Miss they turn for home. May Never Know is taking the lead here. May Never Know and Gary Stevens open up the lead by 2. Our Brain Trust, Sombaye and Sir Troubadour trying to close the gap into the final 16th. May Never Know holding off the boys on the outside. Here comes Sir Troubadour in between horses. Sombaye and up the rail. Here's Our Brain Trust, and Our Brain Trust gets up on the rail to win. Somebody off the turn takes the lead as War Story cuts the corner. Take Your Guns and Opportunities coming too. These 4 arriving at the final furlong from Carlino. Shifting ground here is Hard Study. Opportunity draws up alongside. War Story fights on for the fence. Take Your Guns is in the center, but it's the old man Opportunity. Opportunity wins the Brooklyn by 3 over. Pure Sensation off the turn to a 44.03 half mile. Conquest Tsunami on the outside. Pocket Change third behind them. Disco Partner is closing on the outside. Blind Ambition is trying to find a way through too, but here comes Disco Partner on the outside of Conquest Tsunami and Pure Sensation, and Disco Partner did it again. Drive. Here comes Engage coming up to the top 2 as they arrive into the final furlong. Still having fun. Charging on the outside in the center of the track with each and every stride, and Beautiful Shot is closing late as well. Here's Still Having Fun alongside of Engage. Promises Fulfilled, World of Trouble, Beautiful Shot. Still Having Fun wins the Woody Stevens. Engage was second, then Promises Fulfilled, World of Trouble, and Beautiful. Into the stretch, and it's Dark Vader. Dark Vader has taken the lead. Rugbyman runs up alongside. Prince Lucky between those two. Sutash is closing on the outside, breaking the rules down the center, and then it's Maskin giving way as Lunar Beauty. Final 16th, still wide open. Prince Lucky between horses. Dark Vader on the inside, Rugbyman on the outside to come to the wire, and it is Prince Lucky in
underneath
the
her. Also room for Paved, who's getting a saloon passage into contention, and Miss Paintour behind those, with Miss Sienna starting to run on, for Talberet dropping out to the rear. Paved scoots clear, leads with a 16th to go from Animosity. Miss Paintour is third, Miss Sienna fourth, but Paved streaks away, wins the Honeymoon by 4. Animosity
and Dixie Moon down the lane, the one to run down. Dixie Moon on the inside, under the whip still. Wonder Godot, and they're well clear. It is the battle we waited for. Dixie Moon and Wonder Godot, and Dixie Moon in front. Wonder Godot still unable to pick up the ground. Now comes Dixie Moon, Wonder Godot, neck and neck down to the wire. Dixie Moon on the inside, and a photo from Wonder Godot. Back in third, Hot Cash and Fairy Hill. Danger here, Rose's Vision. And Telekinesis on the inside, and Rose's Vision. And Rose's Vision is back with a great performance today. Telekinesis on the inside in front. Rose's Vision matching a little bit. And Telekinesis coming away. Telekinesis racing on to win the plate trial. Telekinesis a length. Rose's Vision second. 4 away third, ahead by a century. And then Boyhood Dream.
Great racing from all over, but particularly in New York over the past handful of days in the stakes montage from this past weekend, the weekend of June the 9th. As we always do, let's dive into the weekend's best performances from a buyer speed figure standpoint. We've got all divisions covered. You name it, it's here. Let's take a look, and let's start off with a little bit of a surprise, I'm sure, for many people. The best buyer for a 3-year-old male on dirt is not Justify. It is Where She Told Me to Go. And a non-winner is a one other than down at Delaware with a 102 buyer speed figure. This is a horse that has some ability, so nice to see that you get a big fig there, and you'd imagine that those big 3-year-old races at Saratoga have got to start to come into play for these connections. The 3-year-old fillies on dirt, Monomoy Girl winning the Acorn with a 98 buyer speed figure. 3-year-old males on turf, Texas Wedge out at Santa Anita, a 90 buyer, and a non-winner's a 2 other than. 3-year-old fillies on turf, Ms. Mayhem in a stakes race down at Gulfstream Park with an 89 buyer. Older males on turf, we have a tie. We already talked about the Met Mile, those boys right on top. B Jersey and Mind Your Biscuits with 109 buyers in the Metropolitan Handicap. Older female, we just talked about her, Abel Tasman. She gets the job done with a 100 buyer speed figure in the Phipps. Older males on turf, Disco Partner, you saw him in the stakes montage. Another just dynamite effort in the Jaipur at Belmont Park with a 105. And then from Friday at Belmont Park, you also saw this in the stakes montage. Older fillies on turf, 4-star Crook and Sister Charlie. Chad 1-2. In the New York Stakes with a 101 buyer speed figure. There they are, the weekend's best performances from a buyer speed figure standpoint on the Matt Bernier Show. Let's take a look at the DRF TV schedule of events for this upcoming week. This weekend, certainly we're all going to have a little bit of Triple Crown hangover, but guess what? You've got Grade 1 action coming up this weekend. Under the Lights at Churchill Downs. Stephen Foster Handicap will be run out there beneath the Twin Spires. Throughout the rest of the week, you will have DRF Bets Races of the Day. You'll have Formulator Angles. You have Woodbine Plays of the Day. You'll have the DRF Players Podcast with Jonathan Kinchin, Peter Thomas Fornatal. You'll have the latest edition of Out of the Gate with all the usual contributors. And then on Friday, we will have the latest edition of the Matt Bernier Show, the preview edition. We'll go over some races from this upcoming weekend from all over the place. And like I said, maybe I'll touch on a little bit of a comparison. Compare and contrast, you make a decision. Through this point in their career, through the Triple Crown, who has been more impressive, Justify or American Pharoah? So we'll get to that in time. If you've been listening to this live, thank you for doing so. Live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forum's Twitter handle, at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forum's Facebook page. If you've been listening podcasts like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com. Over on YouTube, click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. Over on iTunes, write us a little review, give us a nice rating. We'd really appreciate it. You want to follow me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. Questions, comments, concerns, you can fire away on Twitter or in the comment section below on YouTube beneath the video player. For the rest of the week, until the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show comes out, best of luck however you're playing, whatever you're playing, wherever you're playing. This has been the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show.